Hey, what's up, tubers? It's Tony, and apologies, I needed to come back and remake this video. I initially made the first video and then one of my subscribers ran into a problem. I was able to help him figure it out, so I'm sure you're going to need to know this information as well, and I didn't think about that when I made the initial video. So today I'm going to show you the location of and how to replace your output transmission speed sensor, okay? And I'm going to show you the location of your input transmission speed sensor on your 2015 Accord 2.4 liter motor with the CVT transmission. The sensors should be located roughly in the same place no matter what year Accord you drive. They're all the same for the most part. I also want you to know that excuse me, the transmission sensors do not need to be programmed. So if you run into a problem for some reason and you have to go to a mechanic or dealership, do not let them tell you that you need a new transmission or they have to run this expensive diagnostic and all that crap just to get money out of you, okay? Why would you need to replace your transmission speed sensors? And by the way, the transmission speed sensor is not the same as your ABS speed sensor. Well, the reason why you would need to replace the transmission speed sensor is first, D3 would be blinking on your dashboard. Your transmission would be shifting erratically. You more than likely won't be able to drive more than 30 miles an hour. And if you try and race the engine any higher than that, you will notice that the engine is not, or the transmission rather, is not cooperating with you. There's your part number for the output sensor, 28810. The input sensor is 28820. So right quick, let me show you where the input transmission speed sensor is located. And by the way, the output sensor is located behind the driver's front wheel. Pop the hood, face the motor. Look for that yellow tag there. That is your transmission fill cap. You just grab it and pull it up when you need to add transmission fluid to the transmission. See that nut there? Behind that nut around that corner is your input speed sensor, and that is check engine code P0720. See the rusty nut on the bottom? That's the input transmission speed sensor, okay? And again, check engine code P0717. Warning, guys, that sensor will not come out easily, so take your time. I have a video out there that will show you how to remove that sensor, and especially if it breaks off, you'll need to watch that video. But take your time. Before inserting any of your sensors into their housing for the transmission, make sure you take fresh transmission fluid and coat the orange O-ring seal of the new sensor before inserting it into its housing. If you fail to do this, guys, that O-ring could dry out prematurely from excessive heat from when the transmission gets really hot, cause a leak, destroy the transmission's sensor, and you'll be right back to square one. So now you know where the input transmission sensor is and what its check engine code is. Now I'm going to go and show you where the output sensor is located. By the way, guys, before working on anything electrical in your vehicle, always disconnect the black cable from your battery. Tools you'll need to do the job: 10 millimeter deep socket, 12 millimeter socket, 12 millimeter wrench will come in handy as well, 3/8 ratchet, long driver, and you may need a swivel as well, but we'll get to that later. Behind the driver's wheel, there's this little cover. Behind it, there are two sensors. The black one is your output sensor. The blue electrical connector is your transmission fluid temperature sensor, and that is code P0843. To get this little tab loose, guys, take a flat blade screwdriver and just put it behind the head. The pin's head, pull it out. Then you can go ahead and remove all this stuff here, okay? I usually just take this flap and put it down here somewhere. And there are your two sensors. Both are retained by a 10 millimeter retaining bolt. To disconnect the electrical connector, the tab you need to push down on the back side of each sensor's electrical connector, which is dumb, but it is what it is. Push that tab in, and then you can pull the electrical connector away. Warning, this output sensor will not come out easily. So once you remove its retaining bolt, you're going to need to take that sensor and push it that way, up and down, trying to free it. I then recommend that you go to Harbor Freight. The brand is Pittsburgh. Get yourself a set of pry bars. They come in a pack of 4. Get the smallest pry bar, and what you want to do is wedge that pry bar between the sensor and the transmission's mating surface. Be careful not to damage the mating surface because you could cause a leak, and you don't want to break this sensor off in there. Okay, take your time, guys. It may take you 20 minutes to get this out, but you'll get it out. Just take your time. Okay, so what brings us to the reason why we remade this video is right after I loaded the initial video, someone reached out to me because they were trying to replace that sensor and they couldn't get it out at first. But then when they got it out and installed the new sensor, they came up with a new check engine code. That's after they reset their light, hooked the battery up, reset the check engine light. It took the vehicle for a test drive. The dashboard was still blinking D3. The transmission was still shifting weirdly. And now they had a bunch of things lit up on the dashboard and a new check engine code, which was P0720. So if you replace your input or output sensor, and once you reconnect the battery, reset your check engine light with the scan tool, take the vehicle for a test drive, and you notice what I just finished talking about, scan the vehicle. If you come up with code P0793, what that means for you guys is, come on. It means the new sensor is not seated correctly, because P0793 will mention something about no signal. That just simply means for you that the car's computer and the sensor aren't talking to each other. So what's the fix for this, guys? Take that 10mm retaining bolt, so right there, turn it just a little bit, guys, to force this sensor down. Then go back, reset the check engine light, and see if that fixes your problem. I've gone through this a number of times, so I'm confident that will fix your problem. This is the most common cause for P0793, is that the gear back here, this sensor is not pushed in far enough for that gear to read that sensor. So turning that nut just lightly will push this down, and then you'll find that that fixed your problem. If not, then you may need a mechanic because you may have another problem going on. So again, the blue electrical connector is your fluid, transmission fluid temperature sensor, P0843. The black sensor is your output transmission speed sensor. Okay, you just want to make sure that the sensor is pushed all the way in and the electrical connectors are reconnected. Remember to put fresh transmission fluid, not motor oil, on the O-ring seal before you place it back into its housing. Okay, this is one way of tackling this job. The other way of tackling the job, guys, is to remove the air box, the battery, and the battery tray. And although I'm not going to take the battery and battery tray loose, I'm going to make sure you understand what to do. If you're going to do it this way, disconnect the black cable first, then the red cable. When you put everything back together, connect the red cable first, then the black cable. To remove the air box, 2 clips right there, 10mm bolt there, clip here, 10mm bolt there, and you can pull the whole air box out of your way. Once you move the air box out of your way, guys, and by the way, if you're not savvy with what you're doing, make a video as you go along or take photographs. Should you have any questions, they will help you put things back together. Once you take the air box out of the way, guys, you want to disconnect this 10mm nut right there to this ground wire. Make sure you hook it back up in the end. And also from the top, you can see those sensors, but that's probably not enough for you to work on those sensors. You need a 10mm deep socket to break this loose here and there. You can remove this out of your way and then take the whole battery out. Remember, black cable first, red cable when hooking it up, red cable, then black cable. Make sure you reset your check engine light after you reinstall the battery. On top of the battery tray, there are two 12mm bolts that you'll need to remove, and under the battery tray there are two 12mm bolts that you'll need to remove. To get to the two 12mm bolts on the bottom, that's why I said 10mm or 12mm deep socket and a swivel and a long driver. You will approach it from underneath the battery tray, but from this side, and once you take the battery out, a flashlight will help you see. When you go to put the battery tray back together, should you take this course of action to get to that sensor, put the two top tray bolts back in. The bottom bolt that's way over here, you don't need to worry about that. That gray bolt right there, closest to us, that's one of your 12mm bolts. The other bolt is way under the tray somewhere, so put that one bolt back in. The two top 12mm bolts on the tray, that's more than enough to hold the battery in place. You don't need to kill yourself trying to get that extra bolt way over here, okay? Just make sure you put everything back together in the reverse order that you will be using to take it apart. Very important, guys, to make sure. Now, with the battery out of the way, this will give you access to reach in, or the battery in the battery tray will give you access to reach in there and play with that sensor. You're going to need to really push that sensor in hard. So that's why you may need to remove the battery and battery tray. Now, if you can get to it and put it in from the driver's side wheel, fine. But if you can't, here's option number 2. So now you at least know what to do. Again, remember to coat the O-ring seal with fresh transmission fluid, not brake fluid or anything else, transmission fluid. Even though you disconnected the battery, take a scan tool and reset the vehicle's check engine light, clear all codes, and again, you now know that if you get code P0720, you know what to look for. So apologies that I had to do this video again, guys. We video makers tend to rush to please a few people versus the thousands that really need our help. So sorry the video was lengthy, but I'm trying to help folks save money and time. Thanks for watching, guys.